welcome to the Two Perspectives podcast with me, Reverend Lee, and my cohort, Dr. Naranjan. And we're so grateful to be with you here today, and we're going to explore something that's near and dear to our heart, and that is the topic of what is meditation. And there's so many things that have happened with meditation, especially here in the United States, because we tend to distort things. We tend to Americanize things. Like we've taken yoga and we've made it about exercise, when that's not what yoga is at all. So today I'm going to start off with a very simple concept. The meditation simply means to focus one's mind for a period of time on silence, on the breath, on a mantra, but to quiet the mind. And from that standpoint, we're going to take it and we're going to expand on that concept of what does it mean to focus, or does it even mean to focus? So to start us off, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Naranjan.
There are two things that come to my mind when I think of meditation. One, meditation is not an experience. And number two, meditation is freedom. Freedom from what? It's not freedom in the physical sense or feeling like you're light and comfortable in the mind, but it is freedom from the mind itself. But before we go into what it means to be free from the mind, let's consider the three main elements in our lives. One is the body, second, the mind, and third is the living component. You can call it the soul, you can call it the live energy that keeps our body alive, supplies the mind with energy, and keeps us feeling that sense of being that we are. Think about these three states, the body, mind, and the living aspect, as the three states of matter: solids, liquids, and the gaseous state of matter. We know that water can exist in all three states, as a solid ice cube, as running liquid water, and as vapor. So if we were to drink water, you wouldn't be chewing in an ice cube, or you won't be sucking in air to extract water. You take it in a liquid element. So the mind is a very useful addition to our being. It's like liquid water. Anytime we want an experience, we want to interact with the world, we want to create a new thought or an idea or implement an action, we use the energy in liquid form that the mind is. At some point, we begin to tire of this mind. And the tiredness comes on account of our doing, because we overuse the mind in a manner that may not be best suited for our own well-being. And that's when we try to control the mind or move it in a certain direction. And various different things that we do, we loosely term them under the word meditation.
You know, you and I have explored many ways of meditating. I've done transcendental meditation, Kriya Yoga, Vipassana, Srividya. I've done the one taught by Sri Eknath Esharan, and many others. And you know, is there a right way to meditate? I don't think there is one way. But here's what I know when I think of meditation. I go back to these words: be still and know that I am. So when I hear those words of be still, it means to be quiet, no thoughts, and know that I am. What is the I am? The I am is the infinite. So to be still and be the observer, where you are observing things without attachment, without emotional desire one way or the other. It's actually losing myself in the allness of life, and there's no possible way to describe what that feels like. Because to describe it would mean to say, I'm not in the infinite. I'm in a finite area where there's contrast, and it's in the contrast that I would have an experience. So a lot of times I'll come out of meditation and I'll go, well, that was interesting. I have no idea where I was. And that's when I know I was in a deep state of meditation. I was in the zone, as I call it. I was in the eternal consciousness of God. Now, by saying that, I don't think there's anything wrong by focusing on a mantra, because I know that by focusing on a mantra, that slows my mind down and allows my mind to become one focused. And I know that in Sri Vidya, the practice that we do about awakening the Divine Mother within, it's about using mantras to slow us down and become aware that in this moment, we can be the Divine Mother, we can be the Divine Heart. And in that oneness, we release all of the other nonsense and we remain one focused. So for me, any meditation is better than no meditation. There are days when meditations are better than others, but here's the thing, don't judge it. Don't judge your meditation. You just come back to the mat. And every day you'll find a different way of doing it, and it will be right for you in that moment. Some days I do Sri Vidya, some days I do Vipassana, some days I do Kriya Yoga. It depends on what my mind is going through and what I need to quiet it. Am I an advanced meditator? I'm certainly not a meditator by the standards of the great yogis, like Babaji and the great Buddha and things of that nature. I'm on the journey of learning to meditate. And so that's what I'm sharing with you. I'm sharing with you the steps of my journey. And so I'm going to turn it over to Niranjan and let him share some of his steps, because his are different than mine. We talk about this all the time. So Niranjan, is back to you.
It's interesting that you brought up the concept of different methods of meditation. Simply put, there is no right or wrong method. In fact, there's probably no method. Let's say you're standing at some place and you have a map and you want to get to another place. From where you're standing, the path may be different from where somebody else is standing. And it's hard to come up with one single method that works for everybody. It is more of an individual approach. That said, I appreciate your point about using mantras and different techniques such as chanting, singing, and so on. All these methods, they help bring the mind, its energies, into one uniform stream. And once the mind is not scattered, it's easier to observe the whole of the mental stream rather than individual components. Let's say you're standing by the bank of a river with a fast moving current, moving water, creating waves, and there are drops of water flying all over. It's hard to concentrate on each individual drop and see where it goes and where it lands. But if you step back and look at the river as a whole, then the drop is within the river and you get a whole picture. So when we sit down to concentrate or focus on one thing in the mind, we're bringing all the energies in one place. By doing so, we are able to step back and look at the whole stream of the mind as opposed to a single thought or trying to control the mind here, control the mind over there. And meditation, in its essence, is non-effort. It's like breathing. Do we pay attention to our breath? Do we make an effort to breathe? No. The body is intelligent. It knows when to how to regulate the breath in corresponding to our different activities. Let's say you're running or walking or simply sitting or sleeping. The breath pattern automatically changes. It never stops. It keeps going on and on. So we don't have to wake up in the morning and learn how to breathe again or tell the body, breathe in this way or breathe in that way. Some of the methods we use, which we call meditation, we are doing just the opposite. We're telling the mind, behave this way, do this, follow this. But the nature of the mind, the law of the mind, is the complete opposite. The mind does what the mind wants to do. In general, the mind gives us what we don't want to see or hear, and the mind hides from us what we want to see or hear. And so this constant battle with the mind to align with what we want to do brings us into conflict with our own mind. And the deeper we try to go into what we call meditation, the more we get into conflict with our own mind. And then we tire of the exercise, and then we get up and then we go about our lives till we want to again get away from the mind. One solution to this is what Reverend Lee brought up, is watching the mind, being aware. Let me use this analogy. Maybe this might explain this a little bit better. Think about a fan that's constantly revolving and has 3 blades. One blade represents the body, one the mind, and one the living principle. Just as the body keeps moving from place to place, the mind keeps moving from idea to idea, thought to thought, concept to concept. And if 2 blades of a fan are moving, the 3rd blade has to move, and our life energies are in motion as well. And when all 3 are moving, the body wants to be one way, the mind wants to be another way, the life energy is helpless, it's stuck between the 2, and it ends up following both. We can either stop this whole process, meaning stop the fan. By doing so, we also lose our access to life energy. So you can't stop the body, you can't stop the mind, but what you can do is step aside, just like that central pole that holds the fan in place. We can be that and watch the beauty of the revolving mind, the body, and the life energies. And more we watch, the more we know that we are not the body, not the mind, and we are in awareness of the process that is going on. And as this churning goes on and on and on, it may bring up a lot of different emotions, different aspects of our life. When we go into the mind through, let's say, concentration, or you want to call it meditation, what we're doing in this, in the initial stages, is we're creating an opening. There's so much hidden within us in our subconscious mind. It's almost like a volcano wanting to burst out. And by concentrating on the inside, we're creating a passage for it to come out in the conscious mind. And there's a flood in the conscious mind. And when this happens, we can be overwhelmed, and we quickly open our eyes and end the practice and say, this is not for me. But if we are in awareness, which is observing the mind and its actions and activities as the practice plays out, then it's easy to see that this is just what's hidden deep within that's coming out. And more that comes out, the less there is that is stored within. And eventually, the mind will exhaust itself, and we perhaps will enter a no-mind state, freedom from the mind, which may then be called meditation.
This past week, on December 22nd, one of the great teachers of meditation disappeared and made his transition from this plane to the next, and that would be Ram Dass. And Ram Dass said, the game is not about becoming somebody, it's about becoming nobody. And I think that fits really well with what you've been saying, Niranjan, and it goes along with, I am not my body, I am not my mind, but I have a body and I have a mind. And when we connect with that higher self, that soul aspect, we observe the body and we observe the mind, and it's in the state of not wanting, but the state of just being present with the all, that we enter into the abyss, the void, the presence, the power of the infinite. It's about living mindfully, and living mindfully for me is being the observer and not understanding that I have this body and I have this mind, but that's not who I am. I am so much more than that. I am the infinite expressing, and my body and my mind are vessels through which I experience life. But for me, when I meditate, it's about coming into that stillness. And it's like I'm plugged into this battery and my spiritual juices, everything gets recharged. And then it's easy for me to come back into the world of form. For me, it's like a spiritual reboot. And when you reboot yourself and you connect with the allness that you feel in the state of meditation, then the ego no longer has as much power. It's now the observer, the soul, that is really starting to observe and control the life as opposed to the ego. So it's a matter of letting go. And let's say this, there's going to be a little bit of a battle going on, because the ego does not want to lose, and the ego does not want to let go. The ego wants to control. The soul wants to just be. It's a process of surrendering into the silence. It's a step into the field of infinite possibilities where everything exists all at the same time. And when we can understand that this field of possibilities exists everywhere all at the same time, when we become conscious and we place that consciousness, we create a whole new experience. Meditation for me is something that I love to do. And people ask me, how often do you meditate? I would say to a person meditating, I would highly subscribe to 20 minutes twice a day. First thing in the morning, once in the late afternoon, once in the early evening. Why? It works for me. It's also what Transcendental Meditation teaches, Vipassana teaches it. They all seem to have this twice a day. Now, I don't know if that's right. I'm just saying you've got to figure out what works for you. You've got to figure out the place where you meditate, the time that you meditate, and the method that works for you. Because I don't have your answer. Only you do.
The only person that has the answer is you. To me, that is so true and so deep. Because only we know what is going on in the mind, what stirs the mind, what calms the mind, and what makes us whole and complete. Meditation is something that only humans need. Everything else in existence, in nature, seems to be in a state of meditation. The mountains, the trees, the birds, the animals, they're all working in one harmonious order, an invisible order that humans, for some reason, have decided to move away from. And this is partly because we have this element of being conscious. We can be conscious of ourselves, we can be conscious of the mind, conscious of the body. But a lot of the time, this conscious element is directed at ourself. It's directed at the projected image created by the force of the ego. The ego is a false identity we all carry. And this false identity creates different layers and perspectives and attaches different meanings to different aspects of everyday life. And the hardest thing to get rid of is the ego. Because when we talk about surrendering, we are surrendering from the perspective of the ego. But the ego itself is not surrendered. So once the ego is surrendered, we enter a state of witnessing, which supersedes whatever the ego does or says. Because ultimately, the power lies within us to realize our higher potential. And the higher potential flows through the mind. It doesn't come from the mind. And meditation teaches us freedom from the mind. And in that state of being, we touch our higher potential, and that flows through the mind. And what we can do is craft the mind in such a way that that potential, that energy flows through certain different channels, which then manifests in the world in a way we would desire. So we're taking control of the creative aspect of the mind and not letting the mind create an experience for us. And experiences are the downfall of every meditator. Everybody wants an experience. Everybody desires an experience. You want to see this image, you want to see that vision. But that makes us forget the experiencer, the observer. And once you become the observer, the experience is of lesser value. You don't go after an experience. And a lot of times people use certain methods seeking certain experiences that may be promised by that method. But the best method is no method. Take the example of the body, the breath, and know that if you are aware, alert of the mind and its functioning, not becoming the mind passively or unconsciously going with the mind, but alert and aware of the mind, just like your body breathes on its own, the mind will function on its own, and the two will then come into harmony, which will further create a separation between you as the observer and the body and the mind. And that state of being where you're a witness to everything that is happening around you comes close to what we could consider as meditation.
As you talked about a higher state of awareness, it really became clear to me that the highest state of awareness that we can achieve is that of wholeness. And if you embrace the idea and you go deep within the meaning of the word wholeness, you realize that there's nothing other than you. And when there's nothing other than you, there's nothing to experience. There's nothing to compare against, and then you're in the state. And you don't even know you're there, but you're in the state. This thing of meditation, this idea of meditation, this practice of meditation is one that you'll be pursuing the rest of your life. The key thing is to begin today, for you to become the observer, for you to observe your thoughts, for you to let go of your thoughts, to you to observe your body, to let go of your body, and give yourself the gift of freedom. Meditation equals freedom. The key to meditation is to come back each day at your prescribed time and be still and know that you are one with all that exists. I want to thank you for joining us here today, and I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. I want you to tell all your friends about subscribing to this channel so Niranjan and I can keep getting your ideas, and write comments in the section below so that we can take your ideas and we can expand this and make it meaningful to you. But until next week, when we get back together to explore another idea, we want to wish you the very best and wish you happy meditating. Until then, have a great day.